What's going on, everybody? I'm up pretty early. Sorry if the lighting's a little off, it's still dark where I'm at. But in this video, we have to talk about something that's huge for Bitcoin. Today, the stock market is pretty mixed. And it's a similar story with the Bitcoin miners, although a few are doing very well. For one, Cypher, last I saw was like 8% up. Here we go, that's better now that this is updated. The Bitcoin miners are doing a lot better here. It's going pretty good this morning. Bitcoin really isn't moving that much, but the Bitcoin miners are doing fantastic. Cypher is up 9.5%. CleanSpark is up 3.5%. Iron up 5%. Things have been shifting. We have been seeing more and more good days from the Bitcoin miners, less and less bad days. And I do think this is the beginning of our recovery for the Bitcoin miners, of Bitcoin's push to new all-time highs. First, a test of previous all-time highs, but we are shaping up to have an exciting Q4. And we are also shaping up to have a good September, one of the best Septembers for Bitcoin. Now we'll talk about Bitcoin on the chart in a second. We do have a bearish RSI divergence. It might be what brings us back to our trend line and what rejects us off of the 200 MA once more and keeps us from breaking 65,000, but we'll go over that in a second. But we have some big news coming from China, and this is something that has helped previous rallies. We have Chinese stimulus coming, and Bitcoin rallied strongly after the previous two stimulus package announcements by the PBOC, or the People's Bank of China. And from a technical standpoint, this article mentions a target of $78,000, and we'll go over that as well. We had an announcement on September 24, which is today. That's today. The People's Bank of China announced that it would inject around 140 billion. That's a lot of money of liquidity into the financial system by cutting the reserve requirement ratio by 50 basis points. An analyst from Real Vision, Jamie Coutts, says that China's latest stimulus package is bullish for Bitcoin, pointing out that it would influence other central banks to follow suit. M2 global supply, tied very close to Bitcoin. The bottom is in for global central bank liquidity. Sit back and watch other central banks fall into line. Debasement, currency debasement, is not a bug, it's a feature. And these other announcements from the Bank of China have preceded huge rallies in Bitcoin in the past. For example, they injected $367 billion worth through reverse repos in October of 2023, $140 billion in 2024 of January, and Bitcoin rose 100% following the stimulus package announcements, both times. And this is key with Bitcoin, global liquidity. Coutts pointed out, Bitcoin's performance remains closely tied to global liquidity conditions. China's easing measures should and could prompt broader shifts in risk appetite. Global liquidity, this will continue to grow. Money will flow into hard assets like Bitcoin. Global liquidity and Bitcoin's 4-year cycle are actually very closely tied together. And maybe it's a coincidence, but we do see global liquidity rise right around every Bitcoin bull cycle, right around the right time in the halving cycles, for lack of a better way to put it. We've seen global liquidity spike in 2016, again in 2019, and again in late 2024. This has always brought a big rally for Bitcoin, and I think this time is going to be no different. Now we also have what people are calling a long bull flag. Some people are calling it a very bearish, horrible thing, seeing lower highs and lower lows, seeing a new downtrend essentially starting. Some people are calling it a bull flag. Some people are calling it a new downtrend. Some people are calling that the top is in. Well, this article is basically saying once we can break this downtrend, once we can break this bull flag, Bitcoin is primed for a breakout to above 78,000, which would be a new record high. I think what is very important is breaking this descending resistance, yes, but also breaking Bitcoin's previous all-time high, as well as the last cycle high. I do think that 69,000 will be quite a hurdle to break. And once we can break that, the previous cycle high, I think that is where Bitcoin goes parabolic. Because we have seen that every past cycle, where Bitcoin goes to break its previous cycle high, and it goes on to rally. However, this time around, because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs, we broke our previous all-time high early. We broke it before the halving, which isn't normal. I do think the 69,000 will play a huge role, and I do think we do need to break that 69,000 of last cycle. And a break of 69,000 basically, in my opinion, will guarantee that we at the very least test 74,000. But let me know what you guys think about that. Do you think the previous cycle high, that 69,000 that we got to in 2021, do you think that'll be a crucial resistance to break? Or do you think the market won't really care about it and cares more about 74,000? Let me know your thoughts down below. Now, Bitcoin. We are finding resistance on the 200 MA. We did go over it, but we broke back under it. And we came up literally to test the 65,000, essentially got rejected there. and then failed our 200 MA. So one thing we need to do is we need to break our 200 MA. We need to have our 50 MA flip the 200 MA. We did see a death cross because of this downtrend, because of this pullback, this 50 MA that normally when you're in a bullish market, when you're in a bull trend, the 50 MA is above the 200. However, we saw them flip. All hope is not lost. We have seen this in the past, and then Bitcoin has seen a golden cross and goes on to finish its rally. Follow the cycle. And look at this long downtrend consolidation. Doesn't this look a lot familiar to what we're experiencing right now? Look at what we also saw. We saw death crosses. And then we saw that final golden cross that took us to the promised land. We also found resistance at first, the previous cycle top. That's why I think 69,000 will be important. We might find resistance there, previous cycle top, until we break out just as we have in past cycles. But you'll see that once we do break out, once we do take out that previous all-time high, we go parabolic. We took out our previous all-time high already because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs. Bitcoin ran a little too far too fast in my opinion. Consolidation once in a while is nice. Consolidation is good, especially the type of consolidation we have been seeing. I would much prefer to see this kind of consolidation than to see this hard spike down, where it's basically like look out below, good luck. Bitcoin lost about 60% of its value and then went on to create new all-time highs, just barely took out that previous high. But you know, this is not what we're experiencing, and this is later in the cycle anyways. This is kind of in the wrong spot. The end of year in 2020 was right here. So this was Q4 2020, that parabolic run, and then we get into 2021, major correction at the midpoint of 2021, and then we kind of ended the year with a rally. I'm not sure if we'll see the same this cycle, but I do believe that we will soon break out of our descending trend like we saw in 2020. Once we break that, it's off to the races. By the end of this cycle, I think 100 to 150,000 is more than reasonable if Bitcoin follows what it's done in the past. That is a very reasonable estimation. And I want to show you something else that I think is pretty cool. People that are saying this cycle is any different or anything like that, the performance is worse or something, we're actually right in line with other cycles. Here's the 25 to 2017. It doesn't have the 2012 cycle, but it shows the run, the 2015 to 2017 run, the 2018 to 2021 run. This is basically each cycle's run. Current length is 672 days, and we are right on track compared to other past cycles. The top should be in at about 1,058 to 1,061 days, give or take. We might be a little bit more, might be a little bit less. I would expect probably a little bit less just based on Wall Street, based on front running. I do think as the cycles move forwards, we will see shorter cycles, but this is not the case here. This was actually a longer cycle, although it was a newer cycle, if that makes sense. This was the 2021 peak, whereas this was the 2017 peak, and it was a shorter amount of days. So who knows, our top might come in 1,050 days. It might be more like 1,060, 1,070 days, but it's going to be somewhere around there in my opinion. We do still have a good bit of juice left to this rally. Give or take, we probably have right around a year left. Does that mean hold everything and wait until exactly a year from now? No. Like I said in my previous video, the plan is selling into strength, selling towards the end of the cycle, not in one chunk, not at one time, but while things are good, while things are rallying, selling covered calls, trimming your position, and preparing for crypto winter, preparing to diversify into other things rather than just crypto, because trust me, you don't want to hold these miners on the way down. You don't want to hold these miners into crypto winter. You want to take profits on them while they're strong. And here's something else that I found kind of interesting. It's a bit anecdotal. It doesn't mean everything, but I do think it's kind of interesting, and it shows kind of where things are heading. Bitwise CIO says the most powerful people in finance are buying Bitcoin and crypto. And at a recent summit, he said that nearly 70% of top financial advisors own Bitcoin and crypto personally. Interesting. In a memo, Hogan described a telling moment at a recent financial advisor summit. When asked, nearly every attendee said that they owned Bitcoin and crypto personally. I swear, that word attendee, I don't know why, but the word attendee just sounds hilarious. It makes me think of chicken tenders, but maybe I'm just a degen. Bitwise is a major Bitcoin and crypto index provider managing over 4.5 billion in assets. And Hogan, which is the CIO, as I said, when he asked the same question at past advisor summits, only 10 to 20% would raise their hand. And this time around, 70% said that they own Bitcoin and crypto this year. A huge change. However, fewer than that 70% said that they allocated, Bitcoin and crypto in client accounts. However, Hogan expects that to follow within 6 to 12 months based on past trends. He calls it one of the most powerful signs of the times, that top financial advisors are buying Bitcoin and crypto themselves. Here's one of the key parts. But he says when advisors buy Bitcoin personally, it breeds familiarity, opens the path to later client allocations. Once the advisors realize that, crypto, okay, you gotta understand it and you can do very well in it. It's just a matter of understanding it, following the 4-year cycle, wrap your head around it a little bit more. And these financial advisors, once they realize the power of Bitcoin, they will want to allocate some to their clients. They will see the large performance that it provides. Now, in the video here, we do have an important date coming up. This is going to be PCE. I've mentioned this a couple of times. Watch out for September 27. The end of this week, they will be giving PCE, and hopefully we see it come in under the 2.5% that we saw in July and June. We want to see this coming in hopefully a little bit lower, not dramatically lower. And we want to not see it coming in higher, obviously, while the Fed is busy cutting rates. We want to see that inflation is remaining somewhat tame, not that inflation is spiking up. That would be very, very bad to see inflation suddenly spiking up while the Fed is starting to now cut rates. We want to see inflation stay somewhat steady. Their numbers, whether they're cooked or not, we want to see those numbers come relatively down, but not at a dramatic, alarming pace, slow and steady. But anyways, thanks as always for watching, guys. Hopefully today turns out pretty good. At least it's starting out that way. And in the end, maybe we'll end up having a pretty good September, which is something many of us expected, mainly due to the events leading up to it. But thanks as always for watching, guys. Do you think September will end strong? And what do you think of Q4? Do you think we'll end this year on a strong note? Do you think these Bitcoin miners are going to reach prices we haven't seen this year and attempt to take out previous highs that they saw? And do you think Bitcoin's going to get past that 74,000, potentially make it to 80,000 by the end of this year? I do think the excitement is slowly rolling in. We're seeing more and more good days versus red days, and more traders, more and more investors will come to the agreement that 49K was in fact the bottom back in early August, and we are heading higher. But thanks as always for the support, guys. I appreciate you, and I'll see you on the next one.